You wake up early. You work longer hours than anyone else you know. You skip weekends, you stay late, you push yourself harder than the people around you. And for a while, it works. You get promoted. You make more money. You feel like you're winning. But then something strange happens. The promotions slow down. The raises get smaller. You're working just as hard, maybe even harder, but the results stop matching the effort. And you start to wonder if the entire game changed without anyone telling you. The truth is, it did. Hard work alone stops being the answer at a certain point, and most people never figure out why. They just keep grinding, confused and frustrated, while others seem to glide past them with less visible effort. This isn't about luck, it's about understanding where the system changes, and what actually drives results once you cross that invisible line. Let's start with the part everyone agrees on. When you're beginning anything, effort is everything. You don't have skills yet. You don't have connections. You don't have a reputation. All you have is your willingness to show up and do the work. So you learn by doing. You make mistakes. You improve through repetition. Hard work at this stage is the foundation. It builds competence. It earns you credibility. It gets you noticed. This is the phase where hustle culture makes perfect sense. The person who works harder usually wins because they're learning faster, producing more, and proving they're reliable. If you're starting a career, building a business, or learning a new skill, effort is the primary currency. No argument there. But here's the problem. Most people assume that formula scales forever. They think if 10 hours of work got them here, 20 hours will get them twice as far. If grinding through their 20s built their foundation, grinding through their 30s and 40s will build the empire, and that's where the system quietly breaks down. There's a ceiling to what effort alone can achieve. It's not a moral ceiling, it's a practical one. Your time is finite, your energy is finite, your focus is finite. Once you maximize those resources, working harder stops producing better outcomes. You hit a point of diminishing returns, and yet, because hard work got you to this level, you keep doubling down on it. You think the problem is that you're not working hard enough, so you sacrifice more sleep, you cancel more plans, you push harder. But the results don't come. And that's because the game has changed. What got you to this point is not the same thing that will take you further. The people who break through understand this shift. They stop asking how much effort they can apply and start asking where that effort should go. They stop optimizing for hours and start optimizing for leverage. Leverage is the difference between someone who works 12-hour days for decades and stays middle class, and someone who works focused 6-hour days and builds serious wealth. Leverage means your output is no longer tied directly to your input. You're not trading time for money anymore. You're creating systems, building assets, or positioning yourself in ways that multiply results without multiplying effort. This can look like a lot of different things depending on your situation. It could mean learning to delegate so your team handles the repetitive work while you focus on strategy. It could mean building something once, like a product or a piece of content, that generates value repeatedly without additional labor. It could mean investing money so it grows while you sleep. It could mean developing a skill so valuable that you get paid significantly more for the same amount of time. The specifics vary, but the principle is the same. You're moving from linear returns to exponential returns, and that shift requires a completely different mindset. Here's why people get stuck. They confuse activity with progress. They measure their worth by how busy they are, how many emails they answer, how late they stay at the office. But being busy doesn't mean you're moving forward. It often means you're trapped in a cycle of low-value tasks that feel productive but don't actually change your position. There's a massive difference between working on things that matter and working on things that simply need to get done. Most people spend the majority of their time on the second category. They're reactive. They're putting out fires. They're responding to whoever demands their attention the loudest. And because they're always busy, they never have time to step back and ask whether what they're doing is actually building towards something bigger. The hard workers who break through are the ones who protect time for high-leverage activities even when it feels uncomfortable. They say no to things that don't align with their goals. They automate or eliminate tasks that don't require their unique skills. They invest in learning things that will pay off years from now, even if it means short-term discomfort. Let's talk about the difference between effort and strategy. Effort is how hard you work. Strategy is the plan that determines what you work on. You can have incredible effort with terrible strategy and go nowhere. You can also have decent effort with brilliant strategy and leap ahead. Most people overvalue effort because it feels virtuous. It feels like you're earning your success. Strategy feels sneaky by comparison, like you're trying to game the system. But strategy isn't cheating. It's just being smart about where you place your bets. Think about someone trying to get in shape. They could spend hours every day doing random exercises, eating whatever, and hoping for results. That's effort without strategy. Or they could spend 30 minutes a day on a structured program, track their nutrition, and get professional guidance. That's effort combined with strategy. Same goal. Massively different outcomes. The person with the plan wins every time, and they probably work less. The same logic applies to careers and wealth. Hard work without direction is just expensive motion. There's also the issue of skills and knowledge. Early in your journey, hard work compensates for gaps in what you know. You outwork your ignorance, but eventually ignorance becomes the bottleneck. You can't outwork a lack of financial literacy. You can't outwork poor decision-making. You can't outwork inefficient methods. At some point, you need to stop and learn. You need to study how the game actually works. You need to understand tax strategy, investment principles, negotiation tactics, marketing psychology, whatever applies to your situation. And here's the uncomfortable part. Learning often means you have to slow down. You have to stop grinding long enough to read, to think, to absorb new frameworks. That feels counterintuitive when you've been rewarded your whole life for just working harder. But the people who make the leap understand that sometimes the highest leverage thing you can do is stop working and start learning. Then there's the reality of networks and relationships. Hard work is individual, but most big opportunities are social. They come through connections. They come through reputation. They come through being in the right rooms with the right people. You can work yourself to exhaustion in isolation and never access the opportunities that would change everything. Meanwhile, someone else who works less but invests time in building relationships, showing up in communities, and creating visibility will get offers you never even hear about. This isn't fair, but it's real. And it's another way the system changes. At higher levels, it's not just about what you can do, it's about who knows you can do it. It's about trust. It's about being top of mind when opportunities arise. That requires a completely different kind of effort. It's not about clocking hours. It's about being intentional with your presence and your reputation. Here's the part that frustrates people the most. The system rewards different things at different stages. In the beginning, it rewards effort and reliability. Show up, do the work, prove you're dependable. But as you advance, it starts rewarding insight, creativity, and strategic thinking. It rewards people who can see patterns, solve complex problems, and make high-stakes decisions. These skills don't come from working harder. They come from working differently. They come from reflection, from pattern recognition, from experience combined with learning. A junior employee gets rewarded for doing what they're told quickly and accurately. A senior leader gets rewarded for knowing what to do in the first place, even if they're not the one executing. The skill set is completely different, and if you don't recognize that shift, you'll keep optimizing for the wrong things. Let's address the uncomfortable truth about income. Most people trade time for money their entire lives. They get paid for the hours they work. That model has a hard cap. There are only so many hours in a week. Even if you get raises, even if you work overtime, you're still limited by time. The people who build serious wealth understand that you have to break that connection. You have to find ways to earn that aren't directly tied to your hours. That could mean building equity in a business. It could mean owning assets that appreciate or generate passive income. It could mean creating intellectual property. It could mean negotiating compensation structures that reward results instead of time. But the core principle is the same. You're decoupling your income from your labor. And that requires a completely different approach than just working harder at your job. Another trap is perfectionism disguised as hard work. Some people stay busy because they're endlessly refining, endlessly tweaking, endlessly trying to make things perfect before they ship. They tell themselves they're working hard, but really they're avoiding risk. They're avoiding the discomfort of putting something out into the world and getting feedback. Hard work becomes a shield against judgment, but progress requires shipping. It requires iteration. It requires learning from real-world results, not theoretical perfection. The people who break through are often the ones who launch before they're ready, learn fast, and adjust. They value speed and feedback over endless preparation. That's a mindset shift that has nothing to do with effort and everything to do with courage and adaptability. There's also diminishing returns on physical and mental energy. Your brain doesn't work the same in hour 12 as it does in hour 2. Decision quality drops, creativity drops, problem-solving ability drops. If you're doing high-value cognitive work, working longer often makes you worse, not better. The smartest people protect their peak energy hours and use them for the most important tasks. They don't confuse exhaustion with productivity. They understand that rest, recovery, and mental space are part of the performance equation. Grinding yourself into burnout doesn't make you more successful. It makes you less effective over time, and it prevents you from seeing opportunities because you're too tired to think clearly. So where does this leave you? If hard work alone isn't enough, what do? You start by auditing where your effort is going. Look at your typical week. How much time are you spending on high-leverage activities versus low-value busy work? How much are you learning versus just doing? How much are you building systems versus reacting to demands? Most people never ask these questions. They just keep their heads down and grind. But the people who advance start treating their time and energy like investments. They ask what's going to compound. They ask what's going to create lasting value. They get ruthless about eliminating or delegating anything that doesn't move them toward their goals. You also need to accept that different stages require different strategies. What worked in your 20s might not work in your 30s. What worked as an employee might not work as a business owner. The willingness to adapt, to let go of old identities, to learn new skills, that's what separates the people who keep growing from the people who plateau. Hard work is still important, but it's no longer sufficient. It's a baseline, it's table stakes. Beyond that, you need leverage, strategy, learning, relationships, and the courage to do things differently than you did before. The people who seem to succeed with less effort aren't lazy. They're just playing a different game. They've moved past the point where effort is the variable that matters most. They've built systems. They've developed expertise. They've positioned themselves strategically, and because of that, their results are multiplied. They're not working less because they care less. They're working differently because they understand more. And that's the shift you need to make if you want to keep progressing. Stop measuring yourself by how hard you're working. Start measuring yourself by whether you're working on the right things in the right ways. That's where the breakthrough happens. If this perspective challenged the way you think about effort and success, hit the like button. Drop a comment sharing where you are in this journey and what you're working on changing. And subscribe because we're going to keep exploring the systems and strategies that actually drive long-term results. Thanks for watching.